And a one, and a two. Hello and welcome to the Board Game BBQ episode 252, brought to you by Advent Games and our Patreons. You've got Connor here on the mic as your host, and I'm joined for a very special episode. Look, this guy isn't white special, but he is special, and that's the guy who just had a bit of a chuckle, and that's Dan. How you going, Dan?
Hey, my mum thinks I'm special. That's all that matters.
My mum says I'm special. Yeah.
How you going, Connor?
Good. Long time no see.
Yeah. It's only been 7 days.
It's only been 7 whole days. And what a 7 days it's been. But the real reason why it's a special episode is we have Board Game BBQ award winner from 2022 for Weather Machine, the art and graphic design, I must say, for Weather Machine, and that is none other than friend of the pod for a very long time, Ian O'Toole. How you going, Ian?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're much better that you're here. Like, let's be honest. Like, if it was just me and Dan, it would have devolved into a football
absolute
podcast.
Chaos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God.
And with that, Ian brings some much needed sensibility to the podcast as well. But so look, we're super stoked to have you on as per usual. You've been such a great supporter of ours, and we're happy and congratulations, of course, for the award for best artwork for Weather Machine.
Yeah.
Very, very well earned, I must say. The artwork is sensational, as you always do. But look, you've been on several times before on our show, and we just thought, hey, love to have you on, catch up with you, see what's been going on, with your work, and just sort of have a bit of a chat. And you can even jump in and be a third host if that sounds pretty good to you.
Sweet. Yep. Sounds good to me. I think this is my third time.
Third? Yeah, I reckon
fourth.
Third.
Yeah.
Fourth.
I couldn't let go broke.
We were talking before the show. We're just going to add you to the roster.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's an opening Sunday fortnight, so it's not really an option. Like, you're in. Like, you have to join.
Right.
It's blood contract. But yeah, so you're a man that's always busy, right? Like, I just keep seeing you popping up doing artwork and graphic design, and because you're coupling both. So what's been going on? What can you fill us in with?
Oh, wow. What has been going on? I'm trying to think of of what has been announced, what has been shown, and what hasn't. I don't want to put my foot in it.
Don't just go. Like, go. It doesn't matter.
I've been really, really busy. What have I been working on? So a couple of stuff which is done. I mean, Inventions is obviously done. That hasn't come out yet. That's done. Voidfall is going to show up fairly soon, I think.
Yeah, that's in that's soon-ish. Like, I think it's shipping as we speak, so that'd be cool. Great, looking forward to that one for sure.
I tend to lose sight of them once they're off my desk.
Yeah.
A year later or whatever. So that's exciting. That's a big box full of stuff. Other than that, I think Calamala has just been announced, which is a new version of Fabio Lopiano's first game.
Yes.
Fabio is the designer of Merv, and recently co-designer of Autobahn and Sankore, which is another game that I've done with him, which has also been announced but hasn't. I think they've just shown the cover. That's Osprey Games. That's kind of a follow-up to Merv. And I've got a bunch of stuff which I'm pretty sure hasn't been announced yet. And I'm working on Speakeasy, which is Vital Lacerda's next game.
Yeah. So I got to play Speakeasy with you when maybe like a month and a half ago.
was a little
So
long,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, and feel free to jump in, sort of. And Dan, I actually really think you'd like this one. I know you sort of.
I saw
you're a
you
fan,
guys
yeah.
I saw you guys in the channel, and it was like me sort of at the window going, "Oh, guys, what are you playing? What's going on? What's going on in there?" But I noticed that you're in a play test for Speakeasy. It's like, all right, I'll sit on my hands and I'll wait and hear all about it when you're ready to talk about it. So
there will
go.
be more play tests. Never.
Yeah. I think it actually would have been better if you had subbed in for me, Dan, because it was like I was like, I don't know, I'm just trying to, play my cards and whatever. But effectively, you're running, you're like rum running, really, aren't you? Like you're trying to run these clubs in New York, and like lots of sort of Vital games, there's different levers being pulled, and there's one thing that leads to another, and you can't do one action without doing that. So it's very, very typical, but also kind of a little bit of area control going on too. Hey, Ian, with like you sort of owning certain parts of the city, so it's a bit different. A bit of card play as well, which was kind of cool. I quite enjoyed that. But
I do know that the area control mechanism has changed since we played it, Connor. And Vital is very proud of it. He keeps telling me about it every time I talk to him. So I haven't played this version of it yet, but soon I will.
So, Ian, with a game like that, how do you approach the artwork? Do you do research into the era, or do you come with does Vital already come with some ideas of what he wants it to look like, or do you sort of like I said, sort of do a bit of research into that era and that kind of art style and try to replicate that and bring that to the game? How does it work?
It's a bunch of research. I have just to my left, off camera, is a bunch of books on 1920s fashion and typography and all sorts of things. So I just kind of
you're not just sitting at home drinking a bunch of moonshine.
No, not yet.
He is.
Well, that's just business as usual.
Vital doesn't really. I mean, he's very clear on the theme and what needs to come across. But other than that, he's happy for me just to go and explore it myself. For me, it's just a case of looking at. I tend to look at like illustration styles, that were used and graphic design styles, things that you'd see in posters and all of that sort of thing. But also I'd look at sort of anachronistic representations of that period. So things like, film posters or comic books even that are set in that time period that evoke that time period, but aren't necessarily in that style. That's always the first step, is just look at a bunch of stuff and it becomes a big sort of melting pot I try and make sense of. But it's a really fun part of the process. It's very exploratory.
And what does that process look like for you? Is it just a bunch of more personal? Is it just a bunch of notepads or sketch pads or cocktail napkins? Sort of.
That would be thematic.
Yeah. Do you dedicate time to sit? Do you sit down and just push it out, or do you wait for inspiration to come and then just jot it down on whatever you can? What's your creative process?
It depends a little bit on the game. With Vital's games, because I know they're coming. It's not, because I hear about them early and I play them early. So there's a bit of a sort of marinating time period where I kind of think about it and mull it over. But once I start to work on it proper, it's sketchbook work mostly. I'm just kind of trying to find something, and with all of these games, it's trying to find like a hook to hang it all on, basically. And that can be anything from like an Art Deco style, or it could be, I don't know what it is yet. I'm not there yet, but but for this one, but it's just trying to find something that is kind of like the linchpin of the visual style for the game.
Yeah, right. So you've sort of Speakeasy. Would you say that's taking up the most of your time at the moment, or do you compartmentalize and sort of go and you've got a couple of things on the go? Like I always admire how often I see a game with your graphic design and artwork come out my mind works in a particular way where I would actually probably do almost like a grazing plate. Like I would come and do a little bit there and a little bit there and a little bit there. And that's probably like my, not that I'm anywhere near as talented as you, but my downfall with painting my miniatures is I'll paint a little bit of one and then get bored of that one. And then I'll go back and paint another one and totally forget that one's finished. So do you have just speakeasies there in the forefront of your mind now? Or is that part of a swath of things that you're working on?
It's part of a group of things. I usually run about 4 projects at a time. Sometimes that it never goes below that. Sometimes it goes above it. But right now I'm kind of on the tail end of a couple of projects. Kalamala is one of them.
Yep.
And there's some others. Actually, another one that has been announced is the newest Iron Rails game from Capstone Games, which is called Age of Rail. So that's another one that's very much just on the tail end of being finished. And then Speakeasy is ramping up. And then I have another game, which is, I also forgot to mention, has been announced, which is Galactic Cruise, which is another pretty
I love
meaty
that.
size,
I love the art
meaty
style
size
of that.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I love it.
Thanks. Yeah, that's
I know nothing
a fun
about
one.
it, but it looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like just Dan's comment about, I know nothing about it, but it looks amazing. Do you feel the pressure sometimes of it being like, oh man, like I know that it doesn't all hinge on my art or my work, but it could be a really big selling point? Like, or is that something that inspires you to do your best? Or like, how do you sort of deal with that at the moment?
I don't think about it, honestly.
No,
That's not something no, not really. No, that's too weird for me to think about. Yeah.
Oh no,
Too much pressure.
Yeah, too much pressure.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it's great. Really, sort of clear stuff. It was interesting. Going back to Speakeasy, playing it with you because Vital had sort of come up with these placeholder action tiles or things like that.
Right.
And you sort of were going through and explaining your process of why you think certain things needed to change. There was like at one point 2 symbols that were really, really similar. So Dan, there was like, no, this action is to get guns and this action is to fight, but they both had like, he's like, and Vital's like, no, the Tommy gun is pointing one way to get the guns and pointing the other way, like to fight.
Yeah. Oh.
And I was like, yeah, no, there's already enough going on that I need like 2 totally different things to do that. So that for me, that's really obvious. But there'll obviously be some little cues or things you pick up as you go along, Ian, that you go, nah, that definitely needs to work. So what are sort of some things that you need to make sure that is really, really clear when the product is finished, that you can differentiate between actions or cards or what's art and what's graphic design?
Right. Yeah, there's just a bunch of, especially with Vital's games, there's a bunch of that sort of stuff. So the playtest that we had of Speakeasy was also my first time playing the game. And one of the things I tend to look for is what the learning experience is like, and if there's things that we can do to make that easier, if it's things that we can do to make it more intuitive. There was one section of the game that wasn't immediately obvious to me how it worked. So I just kind of made a mental note to try and pay a bit of attention to that and see if we can make it more obvious. And often that's like a thematic thing. Often that's kind of presenting it in a certain way thematically that just makes it clear what you're supposed to be doing. Also, your player board kind of is supposed to represent your headquarters almost, and you've got like different aspects of it. So I'm kind of thinking about, is there a way that we can further cement that as kind of feeling like your headquarters? I really like that in a game where you've got like your own player board that represents your own, whatever it is, your farm or whatever.
Your boat.
And when you put, cards or tiles on it, it all kind of matches and makes it look like it's getting bigger and better. So that's sort of something that I'm thinking about as well. But yeah, there's a whole ton of stuff to think about as regards clarity and making things easier to learn and play and all that sort of stuff. So as you know, pretty complicated games. So.
I think you're talking about the like having your home base and you building up and making it look grand. That actually really works for this because, you think about that sort of 19, I guess, like, well, it's Prohibition, right, Dan? So it's like 1910s to 1920s, 30s, like opulence, the bigger and grander your house was, the more political pull you had in your society, and especially in America, in those places like New York, you had the big mobster mansions and all that type of stuff. That would actually like make a lot of sense and really a thematic link in with that, because you're going, look, they're definitely going to be ahead at one point in the game because look how much effort's going into, or how much work they've put into their headquarters. So, that's why you're in the business and I'm not, because I had not thought of that.
Yeah. I actually think the game's not finished yet, but certainly based on our first play, I think this might be one of Vital's easiest games to learn and play.
Yeah,
he
that's
says
why Conor said that I should play,
and it's not. Right.
That's true. It is true. I think you would enjoy it, but it also because you would have done a better job than me. So, it is, and it's. I think it is because, like you can sort of wrap your head around the concept. It's like people have watched mobster films. There's an interest in that era. Whether it's the Peaky Blinders or like what's that? The HBO show that's sort of set in a similar era. I can't remember in my head. Empire, like those types of shows, like you're investing. Sorry, and I cut you off. You were going to mention something before.
It's that every game that comes out, Vital always says it's his easiest game to play because he thinks they're all easy. Whereas I think by most people's measure, they're maybe getting heavier as they go. I'm not sure, really. It goes up and down. But I genuinely think that Speakeasy is a lot. Like I was pretty surprised at how approachable I found it.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was too. Another game of your art that I've really enjoyed and thought it was just really, really clean, was Dead Reckoning. So I just thought like the art behind that was great, and the graphic design, again, it was so simple, it was different. And that's a game where you're building up your ship, right? Like, so, you've got the upgrades of the ship and you slowly go along, you upgrade, and the same with your ship, your crewmate hands. So that's one that leans into that process of, hey, your home base is bigger and grander, your cards are more powerful. How was that experience sort of developing and being part of with the upgradable and the see-through cards? Was that really fun? Like, I would imagine that would be cool.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's not often that I work on a game that has a component that's 100%. This is what it's going to be, and this is the solution, because it's a system that John D. Clare has designed, the card crafting system. So usually that's kind of a more open question. We have this thing that we want to do. How do we present it? What is it? But this is already, we know the material. We've made two games, I think, already with that system. Yeah. So that's interesting. So it's kind of designing within more type parameters than I'm used to. But this game works differently than those other two games. So it's a new system. But it was interesting. It was really hard to prototype.
Yeah. Oh, I could imagine.
Because, they had to get the factory to send me a huge stack of those clear cards so I could prototype them.
And did you just sort of draw with like with Sharpie on top of them? Be like, oh, this is the pirate, little stick figure pirate. It's like, this is
the sort of. I prototyped pretty late because it was such a time-consuming process. But lots of stickers, basically.
Yep, they have to be. That's the. Otherwise, there's no other way. Like, especially with, and even like with the position of the different upgrades as well. Like, that's like you wouldn't even think of it. Like, so, for those of you who haven't played any of these, there is a name for it. I've blanked on it. John DeClaire card crafting. John DeClaire sort of has a system where is it Edge of Darkness is one of them. Into Darkness.
Mystic Vale was the first one.
Mystic Vale is the first one, and then I'm trying to think of Edge of Darkness, but Dead Reckoning, which I've talked about on the show before, you're effectively crafting cards that are your crew, but it's not just a matter of us three playing against each other and card playing. Your cards are your actions, your cards are your currency, effectively. Like, it's a whole bunch of other things. So it's and then you've got the map and moving around the map and all that type of stuff, which is really engaging. But yeah, that I when I opened it up, it was definitely like, oh my goodness, like I had no idea what type of game it was going to be. Like, and again, I had a lot of a perspective of how long it would have taken to come up with the graphic design and the artwork from your end. So, yeah, just another one you sort of knocked out of the park. I reckon that was just
yeah,
great.
It was a big job. There's lots of illustration work in it. There's also 2 expansions that were and another one since then, but 2 was part of the first Kickstarter. So yeah, a lot of illustration work, a lot of graphic design. It was really fun.
I got a question. I know you were going to be our guest host for tonight. I know we weren't going to grill you as much, but I'm just looking at your BGG bio and looking back to Stevenson's Rocket, which is 1999, Age of Steam is 2002. Have you ever reflected on how your style or your artwork has changed from those early days, or do you think it's been consistent? Like, are there things that you've learned along the way where you look back and go, oh, I can't believe I did this on Irish Gauge, or on I shouldn't have done that on the Gallerist or whatever?
Wow. No, I don't think I have. I probably will now. I don't think so.
Oh,
There's
sorry.
definitely stuff. Yeah,
I'm going to send Ian into an existential crisis.
There's definitely stuff I've learned, and there's definitely a few games that I would probably approach a little bit different. I mean, nothing major, but there's probably a few that I would approach a little bit differently. Yeah, no, not really. I probably should a little bit more. It's because it's like 10 years basically that I've been working in board games. So
This
that's
20?
a good question, but I don't really have a good answer to it.
Well, I'm still waiting. I think we mentioned this last time you were on the show. I'm still waiting to see, and I'm not sure if it was you, Connor, but Connor, are you aware of the Criterion Collection, which is a company that brings out old movies and they redo them, but they'll redo them on like Blu-ray, and you'll get all these behind the scenes footage, and you'll get all these extras, or you get a box and it might have a script and there's other stuff in it. I want to see like the Ian O'Toole collection where he goes back and redoes artwork for like Cluedo or just some old favorites, but bring back the Ian O'Toole sort of collection. Where I'd love to get some of those sort of games. So that
it could be like
something for your retirement.
Yeah, like Take 5. Take what's Ian's 5 game that he wants to
Hero Quest, the Ian O'Toole version. Right? So it's just exactly the same mechanics, but it's been just really, the artwork's been really jazzed up with your style. I think that would be awesome. That'd be bestsellers.
Would be.
Any publishing company would be crazy not to approach you. And like Hasbro, Game of Life, but with Ian O'Toole artwork, you know? It would be fantastic.
Only if it keeps the spinner. If the spinner's gone, I'm not buying it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Does it have the Pop-O-Matic bubble? Oh, no, that's trouble, isn't it?
And the little they're not even meeples, the little pegs.
Pink and blue pegs that go in the car.
Yeah.
You'd have to change that now.
You know the Game of Life better than I do.
Yeah, I suck at the Game of Life, and I'm not talking about the board game.
I knew that was coming. Very good. Well, like we said, we're going to sort of roll into, I guess, our normal show now. And Dan, I'm going to give you the new ball. I just want you to have what have you been sort of playing in the week that we've had?
Funny enough, I do actually have 2 things I wanted to mention before a sizzle as well. But and it's been an interesting week. I've been busy with work, but I've always been a bit of an op shopper. I got this from my mum. My mum was always big on books, and she would always go op shopping and buy cheap books. You know, $2 for a book and blah blah blah. So probably in the last 5 or 6 years, I've started doing it as well. That was how I was building up my Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone
Yes,
fighting fantasy
yes,
collections. I'm
right,
always
yeah.
going to the op shops looking for those green spines and just making a beeline for it and going, damn it, it's not a fighting fantasy book. And I started collecting those Choose Your Own Adventures and pick apart that I grew up with so my boys can read it. And I always keep an eye on the board games too. And I'm very, 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 very rarely do I ever find something I hit the jackpot. But and I wouldn't necessarily say this was a jackpot game, but I picked up a copy of Shut the Box for $2 this week. And Shut the Box is a very, very old game, which I was aware of, which is essentially, it's a box and it's felt in the middle. You can buy it online anywhere from $20 to $50, and it's just these little numbers from 1 to 10 that you flick up and you flick down. And you start the game, you flick them all up, and you roll 2 dice, and the dice combination is what you flick down. So if you roll a 10, then you flick down the 10. If you roll a 9, you flick down the 9. If you roll another 9, you can't flick down the 9 because you've already done that. So what you can do instead is you can flick down 2 numbers that add up to 9.
Oh, yeah.
So you can flick down an 8 and a 1. You flick down a 7 and a 2. So it's a really simple press your luck game. What you're trying to do is just completely shut the box. Once you roll the dice and you can't go, then it's the next person's turn because it's a 4-sided playing board, and everyone's trying to be either the first person to shut the box, or just after 3 rounds you stop, or if someone shuts the box first, then you stop and you add up your score. Obviously the person who shut the box gets a score of 0. Any numbers you haven't flicked down, that's your score, and then you tally it up, put it on a bit, you write it down, and it's the first person to 40. If the first person to 45 triggers the end of the game, and then it's the lowest score wins, much like 6 Nimt. First person that gets to 66 or whatever, shut down the game, and then the lowest score wins. It's me and my boys have had a lot of fun with this for such a simple little dice chuckler, as Jeff would say. It's been a lot of fun, and Ollie, who's 4.5, it's helping him count.
Yeah.
He'll go 10, and then he'll go. He would ask, or 11 and 12. You have to knock 2 numbers down because it only goes to 10 in terms of the little numbers that you flick. What adds up to 12? So we go with there's 7 and 5. You can do the 8 and the 4. And then after a while, he's just doing it himself. He rolls a 10 and he flicks down the 6 and the 4 because he knows the 6 plus 4 is up to 10.
Yep.
So it's just another way that I've completely gamified their education. And
I'm all for it.
It's awesome. And for $2.
Yeah, that's really good. That reminds me a little bit of a Haba game called Secret Code something. It's a three digits. I can't remember what the digits are. But you're pulling a museum heist, and you're trying to get by these like laser security gates, basically. And each one has a number on it, and basically on your turn you roll however many dice it is. I can't remember. But the idea is you have to use those dice, the numbers that you roll, to make the number. So the number could be 18 or 27 or whatever. And the idea is that depending on if you're playing it with kids, you can just do addition and subtraction, or you can do multiplication and division. So you just, this number plus this number gives you that, divided by that gives you that, et cetera, to make the code. So it's kind of a gamifying the maths education as well.
And they're learning and they don't even realize.
That is like...
My kids realized. They were like, stop teaching us maths.
Is this a game where we're going to learn something?
You tricked me into learning. How dare you? Yeah. When you mentioned the inside of the felt box, Dan, it reminded me of this deluxe version of Yahtzee we used to have, where for no reason it came with like this arena that you threw the dice into. Like, what did you throw the dice into when you first started playing board games? The top of the other box, right?
Exactly, the box lid.
That's right, the box lid. But this came with like it was like an arena that you would battle in, and you would throw the dice. Absolutely ridiculous, but it had this lovely felt bottom of the and then it also had a spot for you to take your dice out and place them like along the side. But Yahtzee is another one of those games where I think a lot of my maths learning came from simple addition with playing Yahtzee and stuff like that. Like it's, it just becomes patterns that you sort of recognize. And I know we've spoken in the past that you said like Jack's maths is actually quite good. And no doubt it's just because, multiplying dice or adding dice and things like that. It just makes a lot of sense. But
and they're learning odds as well, which comes in handy later on in life as well. But, you got a 1 in 6 chance of rolling a 6. The amount of people, you'd be surprised, the amount of people who think that it's harder to roll a 6 than any other number just because it's a 6. It's like, no, it's a 1 in 6.
Yeah.
I'm teaching them that, okay, if you got a choice between let's say you rolled a 11. If you've got a choice between knocking down a 9 and a 2 or knocking down the 7 and the 4, do the 9 and the 2 because it's easier to roll a 7 than it is to roll a 9 with 2 dice. And just teaching them those sorts of things. So you work from the outside in and leave 5, 6, 7, 8 because when you're rolling 2 dice, you got a better chance of rolling those than you have rolling a 10 or a 9.
Well, I might grab that game off you, Dan, because I'm doing probability with my year 10 maths at the moment in class. So yeah, that's actually going to be quite helpful for them.
I haven't started teaching about standard deviation just yet.
Well, you see the top of the belt. No, we won't get into that. That's good. And I see you've got another game that actually uses a similar process to the Dead Reckoning process.
I was going to say, it's a little bit of card crafting, and I won't spend too long on it because it has been sizzling in the past, but Jen and I, and we actually played with the boys as well, we played Canvas. Canvas has been sitting on my shelf of Shane for quite a while now. I missed it the first time I came around, and then when Canvas Reflections, which is the expansion, came out on Kickstarter, I backed that, plus I backed the original Canvas to take advantage of that. I don't have the third one, and I haven't played Reflections yet, although I've cracked the book, I haven't had a look at it. But Canvas is great. As you said, it's a card crafting game where you're making these little artwork. I was Ian O'Toole for the afternoon, and just making these little award-winning artworks, where you start with three cards that are just a canvas, and then there's a marketplace of these little acetate sort of cards with a little nugget on it. There might be a balloon, it might be some fireworks, a rocket, it might be a mouse. And what you're doing is you're grabbing them from the marketplace. The very first position is always free, and then you've got these little wooden paint pellets or pellet. Is it a pellet or a pallet? You know, thing you hold your hand. He knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, pallet.
Gotcha.
I was thinking a pallet is what you stock the milk up on. And that's the currency that if you don't want to take the first option, you've got to place the pallet on that to then take the second one, or you place 1, 2, 3 so you can take the fourth one. And then there's a stockpile where it's constantly refilling the marketplace. And you take these acetate tiles, and you need 3 of them to actually put one on top of the other and create your artwork. And each of the acetate cards, as well as having some sort of feature on it, some sort of picture or whatever, they've also got these icons on the bottom. And on your canvas, there's 5 colors. And so the acetate tile will have 2 swatches. It might have a red and a green, or a blue and a yellow swatch of the 5. And it will also have some icons. And the 4 icons represent hue, contrast, 2 other things that are sort of a bit arty-farty. I can't remember. They'll come to me later. Shape and texture, probably. Anyway, and then you've got these there you go. I've just summarized. Ian Korea into 4 elements, and then and you've got these 4 scoring, and there's probably about maybe 16 or 17 different scoring cards, but you put 4 at play, and that's what you're scoring against. So it's kind of like a strategy game, much like your Cascadia or those sorts of things, where you're collecting all these tiles, but you're scoring against 4 different, only 4 different kinds of criteria at the end of the game. And it might be, well, the ones that it recommends what you start playing is, one is variety, so you have to have all 5 colors. You have to have all 5 swatches represented on your artwork when you sell that art piece. And the other one is composition, where you have to have at least all 4 icons or elements to your art piece. But when you take an acetate tile, only 2 of those are represented. So you need at least 3, which also means that you're going to be doubling up one over the other, at least. And so you've got to look at the way you actually you compose your artwork as to the order of the acetate tile. So one's covering up something that you need. You want that on top, and they also have the different the elements and the icons. So you might need, in order to be able to get all 5 colors, it might mean that you're covering up your triangle, which represents shape. So you need that shape there, otherwise you won't score on that other scoring card. And invariably, when you've got 4 different ways to score, you're not going to be able to cover them all off. So you've got to sort of make that decision. Okay, I'm going to go for this one and this one, and I'm not going to win a ribbon on that one, and I won't get a score for that one. And so on your turn, you're doing one of 2 things. You're taking an acetate tile off the marketplace, or you're creating an artwork. And it says that you need to show everyone at the table the artwork. So what we were doing was because it also has, just for funsies, it actually has a 2-word title for the artwork.
Mm.
So you read out
that's
loud. So we're getting everyone to read out what the art piece was, and then we were all just giving a little golf clap. Oh, well done! That's a masterpiece, sort of thing. And then we score it, and the boys thought it was hilarious when we were clapping each other's artwork when it's finished. And then you score based on condition 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get these little coloured ribbons. And then at the end of the game, after you've completed all 3 artworks, you add up your ribbons. And if you had 1 green ribbon, it might be worth 1 point. But if you had 2 green ribbons, it might be worth 5 points.
Yeah,
and if you had 3 green ribbons, it might be worth 12. So if you really want to focus on one of those scoring conditions and forgo the other 3, you might score higher. If you have a good distribution of each, then it almost doesn't work, because almost you'll get 2 points for this one, 2 points for that one, 3 points for that one, as opposed to going hard into leaning on 1 or 2 of the scoring elements and getting 12 points for having every single one of your artworks achieving that composition or meeting that one. Another one of the ones that we used was symmetry. Whereas of the 5 spaces where the icons, if the first and last both represent shape, or the first and last both represent contrast, then your artwork has symmetry, and you actually achieve that one as well. It's just really, really fun. It's as well as the card collecting and the card crafting to make your little artwork. I don't know. It feels like you're creating a Dixit card. It just feels very, very whimsical, almost, the kind of stuff that you're creating, and the little nods. Like there was one that was like a fish hook that had a sushi on the end of it. There's another one that was like a mouse hanging onto a balloon, and it's almost like, oh, that's really cute. I want to take that one. It's like, no, I'm not here to make cute. I'm here to get points. I've got to focus on what it's actually bringing to the table. Don't worry about that. Oh, I've got a meteor and I've got a volcano. That could go really well together. No, doesn't matter. So yeah, it's just really fun. It's whimsical, if I can use that word. I'm not sure I've ever used the word whimsical before, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's such a clever use of the acetate, the transparent cards.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see. I'm interested to bust out the reflections, the first expansion, because I know the acetate ones. I had a look at it, and they're actually, the pictures are double-sided. So, and depending on how you use it, the icons on the bottom will change. So it might have a red and a blue swatch, but the other side might have a yellow and a green, for instance. But also, they've mirrored the images beautifully. So on one side, it might be a devil, and you flip it over, and it's an angel. Or on one side,
cool.
Magical, absolutely magical. I don't know how it works in terms of how you use it. I'm not sure whether you have to. Whether you get to flip it around, because when it's in the marketplace, you wouldn't necessarily see what's on the other side. Mm-hmm. So I haven't got into the rules to see how that works. And there is a third one. There is a third expansion, which I don't know anything about, and I probably will maybe go down that path one day, because even as Jen and I were, because we played it with the boys and we played it a second time, just the 2 of us, and it was a lot faster. It played in under half an hour. We were already sort of cherry picking some friends who we think they would really, really enjoy it as well. So it's probably to hang around the collection for a while.
And you mentioned how it's similar to Dixit. You're making a Dixit card.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about Dixit, is when you buy those packs, you're just getting random bits of art. And it's just more things for you to be like, oh, yeah, because sometimes you start to go, yeah, that's the funny looking one and whatever. But just having different art is part of what's fun about it.
I lucked into, a couple of years ago, there was a store in the city that was like they really heavily had like a lot of Dungeons and Dragons style sort of games. But at one point, I think he'd ventured into more sort of generic board games, and then they just didn't sell because he wasn't getting those kind of clientele in. And so he had a table in the middle of in the corner of the Dungeons and Dragons sort of store that was just selling off all these games really cheap, just for Christmas, just to get rid of them out of stock. And I picked up a bunch of Dixit expansions for super cheap. So I got Memories, and I got Voyages, and I got this one, and I got that one, and got them so cheap. So yeah, when we play Dixit, we have like a massive pile of cards to use, and yeah, you're right. They're really, really great to look at. So.
They are good. Ian, in amongst your felt tip pens and digital tablets of art, have you been getting anything to the table recently? Anything you want to have a quick chat about before we move into our sizzling game?
Yeah. So my birthday was back in March, and I finally got something that I've been wanting to
Happy
get
birthday for March.
Long. Thank you very much. It's about time, Dan. I picked. Actually, it's a funny story. Actually, it's a crokinole board.
Yeah,
nice.
right.
I've wanted to own for years and years and years. I've always, threatened to buy one. And this year, I was finally like, my birthday's coming up. I'm going to get myself a crokinole board. And I was looking at two online, and I was trying to choose between two of them. And I said to my wife, Sarah, who I was like, well, I better tell her if I'm going to spend a not inconsiderable amount of money on a crokinole board. I said, which of these two do you think is the nicer? And she said, I think it's that one. And don't buy it because I've already ordered it for you.
Hey,
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Which was amazing. So it was already on its way, which was incredible. Crokinole is a dexterity, like a flicking game, basically. Played on a circular board. I don't know, have either of you played Crokinole before?
Yeah, I've played. I've suffered. Well, I was going to say I've suffered through Crokinole, but it's fun. As in, like, I stink at it. Like, I'm so crap. But yeah.
I'm not familiar with how the score. Feel free to remind me how the scoring works. But I had to go over it once at the Sydney game day. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's really, really simple. You've got the board is divided into 3 rings basically, and there's a hole in the middle. The inner ring is surrounded by some bumpers, which are things that the discs can, bump off and go in crazy directions. And basically what you're trying to do is flick your disc into the center or into the hole, if you can get it, is the most points. And the rules are very, very simple. If there's no discs so it's mostly a 2-player game. There are variant rules for 3 and 4 players, but we play with 2. If none of your opponent's discs are on the board, you just want to get it into the center. That's it. And if your opponent does have discs on the board, then you have to hit one of their discs during your turn. And that's it. And basically at the end, you get scores. One that you get in the hole in the middle is 20 points, and then it's 15 for the center ring, and then 10, and then 5 out, working out to the outer ring. And you play to 80 or 100 points, something like that. Yeah.
So when you say you must hit theirs, are you trying to then go in off them, or are you just trying to flick them off the board completely?
Yeah, both, hopefully.
Okay.
Or sometimes you just desperately are trying to hit it, so your piece stays on the board. We're not very high level players, let's just say. But it's so much fun, and like kids and adults and anyone, like it's a great leveler because it's not. There is skill involved. Like if you go and watch videos of the Crokinole Championships, there's clearly skill involved because those people are very good. But at the level that we play it at, you can play with anybody, and it's just great fun. I've been playing it a ton with my kids. I love it. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
The other question I had was, sorry, Connor.
No, go for it.
Are you limited to where you can stand? Do you have to stay on your side or your?
Yeah, there's an official one cheek rule. The board is divided into quadrants. So if you're playing 2-player, then you must shoot from the outside line, but within your quadrant. So you can angle it a little bit. You can find an angle, but not too much.
Right, but you can't go to the other side of the table and have a crack.
No, you're not allowed to stand up and walk around the table or anything like that.
Because you kind of like blocked, aren't you? Like, because the way that it works is you've got a magnet that that links it's kind of like your stick, right? That you use to move it, and then it bounces off. Like, so it's stuck. Is that a Crokinole? No?
I don't think so.
No, what am I thinking of? Oh, no, sorry.
Thinking of Clask?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Sorry, Clask. No, Crokinole's totally different. My bad. Yeah.
No. You're flicking wooden discs, basically. And we got...
listeners could see Ian and I's faces while you were talking about it.
Yeah.
We're just like,
I knew
our head sideways going,
I knew I'd made a blue when both of you gave me the same look. And I was like, hang on a second. I've gone off on a massive tangent here. It's the other funny sounding name, not Crokinole. Yeah.
Yeah. It also came with a little package of basically this white dust. There's no other way to put it, which is supposed to come with it. Don't worry. Which is this. It basically aids how slippy the discs are and how they glide
Oh,
across
right.
the board, which we hadn't
I was going
used
to
up
ask you
until
whether you
very
have to wax the board or something.
Yeah, not really. You just kind of put a little bit of this on the discs every now and then because the boards are highly polished and all of that. So we recently started using that. So now we've got just discs flying everywhere and going off in all directions. Yeah, it's great. But I strongly recommend. The boards are expensive. You can get sort of cheaper ones, but it is really something that the better boards really do sort of elevate the play. But if you know somebody who has a Crokinole board, or you can get access to one somewhere, I strongly recommend it.
Yes, so that's not Clask, that's Crokinole.
Not Clask. Clask is a fine game.
It is fun. That's got the magnet and the little bit on top that you use to flick your discs with. So that is definitely a great one there.
If you're looking for a new board game, you need to check out adventgames.com.au. They have a great range of games, including pre-orders and hot new games. Anything you could be looking for will be there at Advent. Dean provides excellent customer service that is second to none, and is always keen to support the Australian board game community through events, game days, and even through sponsoring a podcast. So head over to adventgames.com.au today. That's adventgames.com.au.
Dan, I'm going to come back to you because I want to hear about your sizzle before I do mine.
Right. Well, yeah. So we were lucky enough to get a copy for the Board Game BBQ library from Let's Play Games of Splendor Duel. So Splendor is a game that's been in our collection for a very long time. Jen and I love it. And so Splendor Duel, right up Dan and Jen alley. But it's a more compact version of the game that we already know and love, and most of the listeners would as well. Still by Space Cowboys, still from Bruno Catala. Plays in under 30 minutes, and like I said, it's everything that you love. It's shrunk down into a smaller footprint, but it's still got the 5 coloured gems. You've still got a marketplace of level 1, 2, and 3 cards, and the game still starts off quite slowly, and then it suddenly just gains momentum, and suddenly you don't even need to worry about gems anymore, because the level 1 cards you've required will stand in for those gems, and suddenly it's your turn. It was like, well, now I can take that card, which then allows me to get that card, and those cards have points. And then suddenly you're gaining momentum. Before you know it, you're taking level 3 cards and the game is over. But instead of just having the 5 different coloured gems, if you like, and the gold gems are still there as well, the gold gems are the ones that you can use to reserve a card so that you take it out of the marketplace so no one else can take it, or your opponent can't take it, and then you still have to purchase it later in the game, but the gold gem that you take still doubles as a wild, which then sort of encourages you to start reserving things, because having a wild token is great. They also have these two pearl gems as well. And the pearl gems, they're a hot ticket item because there's only 2 of them in the actual game itself. And almost all of the level 2 and level 3 cards require a pearl. So unless you've got a gold that you can use as a wild, you really need these pearls. And where you're taking the gems from this time, instead of having them just off to the side where there's about, I think in the Splendor there's like 7 or 8 of each gem.
Yeah.
And in these ones there's only 4 of each, and they sit in this little 5x5 grid. And the grid can be replenished at any at various stages during the game. But when on your turn, you have one of 3 things you can do. You can take gems, and when you're taking them from a straight line in the grid. So if there's 2 particular gems you wanted, but they're separated by a space because some of the gems have been taken away in prior turns, you can't do that. You can only take gems that are in a straight line. If you happen to take, and just by chance, if the 2 pearls are side by side, and you take both pearls, or if you take 3 of the same color on your turn, then your opponent gets one of these little scrolls, which is called the privilege scroll. And the privilege scrolls, obviously, that's new to the game, but
do you get them from Baker's Delight?
Yeah, next to the Vegemite, what is it?
The coffee scrolls,
the cheesy mite scrolls. I can't say Vegemite. Yeah, the cheesy mite scrolls. Yeah, but the scrolls actually are a way to balance out and level out the game, because there are some things. For instance, whoever starts the game, the other person starts with a privilege scroll just to balance it out. So that's a way that you. So if you take 2 pearls, or if you take 3 of the same color, your opponent gets one of these privilege scrolls. And the game comes with 3. And if they're not in the actual stockpile of scrolls, and when it comes time to take a scroll, you take it from the other person, unless you already have all 3 anyway. But you probably wouldn't do that because as one of the other as a bonus action before your turn, you can cash in a scroll to take any gem you want off the board. So having those privileged scrolls is good for you if you want to take something, and then effectively you take your turn, so you get 4 gems that turn instead of 3. The other thing you can do is you can use a gold, and the third action you can do on your turn is basically purchase one of the cards from the marketplace. Now the cards are largely the same as what they were in the original game, but some of them have bonuses. One of the bonuses is it will allow you to actually have another turn. Another bonus will allow you to actually just cherry pick 1 gem off the grid and add it to your system. Another one will actually allow you to steal a gem off the other person. So sometimes the card you go for, you might not just purely be going for the point value of the card. It might be because it gives you another turn, or it might be because it lets you take one off someone else, steal a gem off them. And another one is if the bonus, let's say it's a green card, it's the Jade card, it allows you to take a Jade gem out of the middle as well. As well as the points, some of the and the bonuses, some of them have these little crown symbols. And instead of the in the first one, I can't remember what they were called. They're called royal cards now, but they were the ones where you automatically get it if you get those 3.
Yeah, like a mission
green
card,
and 4
effectively.
red.
Yeah.
Or if you get 3 red, 3 white, 3 blue, you automatically get this one. In Splendor Duel, I wouldn't want to say duet like some of the other sort of 2-player games. Splendor Duel, there's 4 different crown cards, and you're allowed to take one straight away as soon as you get 3 crowns, 3 crown symbols in front of you, and you're allowed to take a second one once you hit 6, and the opponent is the same. So that's why there's only 4. There's 3 of them are worth 3. 3 of them are worth 3 points, and they also have a bonus, and one of them is worth 4 points. But it has no bonus. But it's more meatier because it has more points. And instead of the original Splendor, where the win condition is you're trying to get to first to 15 points, or I think that extends to a higher point count with some of the expansions. In this game, there are 3 different win conditions, and it's the first to hit either of them. So it's almost like a race, and you could potentially be doing different things. You either hit 20 points and you win the game. If you hit just 10 points, but all in one colored gem, that will trigger the end game. And the other one is if you get 10 crowns total. So you don't necessarily have to be focusing on just big points. You might go for smaller point values, but all of the green Jade cards.
Yeah.
And that was actually how I won the first time Jen and I played. I had 10. Actually, with the last card I got, I hit 2 conditions instead of 1. I hit 20 points. She was on 19 points, but actually 10 of my points were all in the black, the Onyx cards as well. But it's really, really tight because it is such a small space that you're both acquiring the things for. Before your turn, like I said, you can use one of your privilege to just cherry pick 1 gem if you want. And the other thing you'll have to do before your turn, as long as there are gems that have been discarded through purchasing, you can top up the marketplace. And if you top up the marketplace, your opponent gets a privilege scroll to then use something. Because effectively what you're doing is you're refilling the marketplace and then having your turn to take 3 tiles out of it. So it balances out by giving the other person a privilege so they can actually cherry pick something of their choice. But I can only assume that if you never played Splendor before, it will be easy to pick up. But if you are already familiar with Splendor, this will be a snap for you. And I think it is a much tighter game. Because Jen and I would quite often play Splendor. We've introduced it to other people's at sort of dinner parties and whatnot, but we would largely play just the 2 of us. So this is a much better fit for us because it's a lot tighter game. It's designed perfectly for 2 players, with all the mechanics and that real engine builder where it starts off small. I'm going to take 2 reds and a blue, and the next turn I'm going to take a green. I'm going to take 2 more blue, and okay, then now I can buy this card. And before you know it, well, that card and that gem allows me to take this card. Oh, now these 2 cards together allow me to take that one. Now you're stepping up to level 2, level 3, and before you know it, you get this real momentum going with your purchasing. And the other person's pretty much neck and neck. So now you're both vying for the same, big top tier cards at the same time. Like, oh, I wanted that one. Oh no, I want that one. A lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with this one.
It's interesting because I've only really played Splendor at 2 players. So I never grabbed it, even though you can get it pretty much anywhere. So I was holding out for Splendor Duel, and I think I might jump in and get it, because I just found that it was so much fun. And I was late to the game with it big time. Like, I think the first time I might have played it was early this year or something like that, like really, really recently comparatively.
Right.
And yeah, you're 100% spot on with that engine building. You know, you're going, oh, this is going to take me forever. Like, this game will go on for a really long time. And then next thing you know, your opponent's 3/4 of the way finished with an objective or something like that. Or they've, you know, with the original, they've claimed all those cards, what you call them, the royalty cards or whatever. Like, yeah, like it is really, really good. There's a reason why it stood the test of time. But the duel, or the duet as you called it, is definitely on my radar.
Yeah, you've been nodding along, Ian. You're obviously a fan of Splendor as well.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've played regular Splendor, but I liked it well enough when it came out. I've played Duel only once, but I did enjoy it, and I own it. So you've just reminded me. I should get it back out.
Yeah, this will be another. As long as it stays at our place. If it moves over to Mike's house, because it's part of the Board Game BBQ library, I'll have to get a copy for myself. But this will be a game that probably we'll pull out every now and then for a cup of coffee and a quick game of something. It's just really nice. Speaking of last week's question of the pod, it's a great game that plays in under 30 minutes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I play most of my games with 2 players, with my wife. So whenever I hear about a good 2-player game, I usually snap it up, and the result of that is I've got, you know, a backlog of 20 great 2-player games that I've never played, because, you know,
I see nothing wrong. I see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We play a lot of games together, but she very much likes to, you know, have a small stable of games that we play a lot of times, which is great. Yeah. So it's not often that I get to introduce a new game.
What are some of your go-tos?
Usually midweight Euros, lots of Feld, Gaia Project we've talked about before. Like Bonfire, Forum Trajanum, Newton is one that we play a lot. Castles of Burgundy.
Castles. Have you got the new Castles?
No, it's on its way, I think. I assume. I've seen pictures of people. Yeah.
Harry's got it. He's like, oh, like he's like, this is the greatest game ever. Like, it was one of my favorites, and now it's even better. And I'm just sitting there going,
I'm a little concerned that it's just going to be just too big for us. Because again, we only play 2 players, and Castles is a great 1-hour game for us. And that box doesn't say a 1-hour game to me, you know. So I don't know. I'm a little. We'll see.
It'll be another half hour just admiring everything. Like, oh yeah, right. I got to take my turn. Yeah, okay, right. I've actually got a game that Dan, I think that you would love these games. So it is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Have you played these?
100% right. I haven't, but I would definitely would.
You would absolutely adore these. So this is an older game, right? This is delving right back into my archives, and I can't remember why we got it out, but this is a series of games where there's like 8 boxes that you can get, and this might be box number 1. It is an older game, but I still reckon it hits all the right notes. So what you're doing is you're taking the role of the Baker Street Irregulars. So these are the crew that Sherlock Holmes has sort of put together to gather intel for his different crimes he's trying to solve. You know, world's greatest detective. Someone who you can play as in Unmatched, actually, funnily enough, that you can play as Sherlock Holmes. So
the Cobble and
Fog one. Yeah. This has no actions, attacks, or anything like that. Is no combat whatsoever. What you do get in it, though, are some really, really detailed missions that you need to solve in under a certain amount of turns. Well, you don't have to, but that's part of the game and part of the allure. You can take as long as you want. However, Sherlock will think you're a nonce and tell you to go back and do better the next time if you don't. But the one that I've played is the Jack the Ripper Chronicles. It's not Chronicles, but it's a Jack the Ripper with a couple other ones. And I think that's kind of like the one that lots of people have played the most. The cool part of these is similar to, you know, like how Dan with Detective, how it links in each of the different sort of chapters that you do, they link into each other.
Mhm.
The first 4 missions that you do with Jack the Ripper are the same in that you have to carry over things that you have done previously to help you with the next one. Now, it's not as detailed as Detective, I don't think, but there's a couple of things you go, oh, that's right. There'll be details that you go, oh, yep, I've got to remember that. But what you get instead of a database is you get these booklets and newspapers clippings of the times that the crimes were committed. And you scroll through these, and some of these have these really strange, it's all factuals, but all of a sudden there'll be a part about something happening in the Ottoman Empire. And it's like, how is that useful? Is that useful? Is it just a red herring? But it's more about like reading between the lines and seeing the links between things rather than it being really like sort of smacks you in the face. The other cool thing that you have is, so you have a map of Whitechapel, of London, and you're free to move around. There's no it takes you a day to this, whatever. It just takes you a day to move from location to location. And each of it's broken up into a grid on the map. And in each of the booklets, you can go to the grid and it will read a bit of a passage about the information that you need. And again, you need to work out what is crucial information and what is not. So it's really, you do feel like you're solving these mysteries by not interrogating, but going out and being a Baker Street irregular and be like, oh, so what do you know? Sort of, ear to the ground type stuff. But it's just really, really creative how they intermingle the factual of the happenings of the time and then what you are trying to solve. And you kind of feel a bit lost to start with, but as you go on, you start to unravel it. And it's really interesting how much I kind of just got to the end of the scenario and went, look, I'm just having a flyer on this. I think it's this. And you're actually pretty close. Like sometimes it's taken you a bit longer, but we hadn't realized when we played it how quickly you're supposed to do it. So you're supposed to do it in under 10 or 11 turns or something like that, and we just spent forever. We spent 30 turns going interrogating people. But I mean, again, that's if you're score chasing or whatever. But you can really take as long as you want to try and unravel it. It's such a great product, and it's really, really fun to see how much work they've put in it. So you've got the Jack the Ripper ones, and then you've got sort of a few other that aren't connected. But each of them, I believe, and people, please correct me if I'm wrong, they come with a chronicle and then some spare ones that you can just that are from a similar date and time. But yeah, this would be something I could imagine you would just get it out. Same thing you were talking about, with Jen. You sit down with your cup of coffee and go through. Yeah, and someone gets to be the lead investigator. So if you really wanted to, you can start putting on voices.
Are you just up to you're just making your own notes?
Yep, making your own notes. There's
so many notes.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
I need to get out the red string and start.
It's exactly what it is. It's the Always Sunny in Philadelphia Pepe Silva meme. I know what I'm doing. It's there. It's there. I can just see it. And you kind of go, and you end up having these kind of like with Letters from Whitechapel. You have these arguments with the people you're playing with, and you go, no, I just really don't think that's important. I think you're wrong. I don't think that you're really fighting, because if you're doing it with the timing, it's really crucial that you get it in under those turns. Just like with Letters from Whitechapel, it's if we don't get him now, if we don't go there, then he's going to escape. And like I said, I know there's at least 4, if not many more. I've only played this one. I've investigated, getting a couple of other ones, but yeah, it is. How
many mysteries are in each board or in the box?
I was just looking at it now.
10 in the original one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes,
the original one from '82. I'm just looking on PGG now.
This one,
so
10 murders.
Yeah, I had
this is
first
box number 3.
Box. Yeah, I've got the first box of the more modern versions of it.
Right.
And I've played maybe 4 of the mysteries. There's a couple in that box that, at least in the printing that I had, were a bit broken due to typos and stuff like that. I think that's a bit of an issue with some of them. It's so clever though. It's really immersive. Like
Mhm.
when you realize, because it comes with
It
also like a
sounds it.
directory of
Yes,
businesses,
it's
and
the
so you
London
can just look at
directory.
people's
Wow.
addresses. And I remember I had this amazing moment in one of the mysteries. I'm dreadful at this game, like just the worst. And I had tracked something down to a street, but I had missed crucial information as like what house number it was supposed to be. So it's just like, I guess I'll just go door to door.
Yeah.
So I just went through the directory and started
Just
going to
door
random
knocking.
addresses on the street. And I got there eventually, but Sherlock he's gone on holidays by then.
So my other question was,
It's really, really
how
good.
do you check at the end? How do you check at the end to see whether you were successful or not?
Excellent question. So at the back of the booklet that you finish with, there's an envelope that has all the solutions to it. So the envelope, you get to draw it out, and as you go along, you start to unfold more and more questions that need answering. So, for example, what will happen is you pull it out, and there's questions that you have to answer. So before you look at the other side, it's like write down the answer to these questions and see how close you get. And sometimes you're like, what did I miss? Like you go, I don't even remember doing like the trapeze artist. What? There's no trapeze artist.
Yeah.
Like things
You
like
know
that.
darn well when you don't recognize anything in the question.
Yeah, I think we're going to sort of score quite like high, which is bad.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. Sherlock it's a score of 100, and it's like almost it's like the baseline score. So if you can get close to 100, you've done well. But yeah, so there's questions that you have to answer. You write down the answers, and then you flip it over, and like sometimes you're going, oh yeah, no, that's right, or it could be like, I think it was Ian, but I feel like it was Dan. Let's go with Dan, but it was actually Ian. Like those types of, there's enough there that you're not going, oh, hang on a second, like what, how, what? Like you go, oh, but yeah, if you can sort of like go off and create your own like little narrative if you wanted to, because there's so much detail in, as Ian said, in like the directories. Like, yeah, I'll just read out so there's like Hodge Pendergast, which lives at 25 Eastern Central. Like there's just random people in the directory. But you've also got these universal helpers, I guess. So you've got like Mycroft, you've got Lomax, the Telegraph, you've got Sherlock himself if you want to get back on track.
He's super condescending. If you go see Sherlock, he's the worst.
I do not know that. Yeah, you can go see Jasper Meeks, Scotland Yard. So all the places that you would think you'd be able to go, like births, deaths, and marriages, like those types of places. If you want to look up details on someone, but yeah, it is. As Ian said, there are some problems with typos, more so with the first few. I think they sort of fixed it up with second editions and things like that. But yeah, it's sort of like the precursor to the Chronicles of Crime, Detective, Modern Crime, all that type of stuff. And it's pen and paper, so it's super easy to set up. You put the map up, you get your notepad each, and you just go your hardest. So yeah, definitely one I think you should keep an eye out for.
Especially if you're getting 10 cases in a game as well. There's a lot of value in that. Yeah.
And they go for it's a while.
Yeah, I think it's worth completely disregarding the scoring, honestly. Because number one, it's impossible. It'll make you feel dumb. But also, I think it's just much more fun to kind of luxuriate in it and test things out and go see different people and chat to people about different things. I think that's the fun of it. I mean, anytime I played it, it's been like a 2 to 3 hour each case. It's been like a long time. And I've done 2 solo, I think, and 2 with other people. So, I think it's just better to relax and take your time. At least in the ones that I played, there are nothing happens during the case in the ones that I played. So you taking longer, it's not a case where you're going to miss something or somebody's going to escape or die or something like that.
That's right.
It's all set, and you can just take as much time as you want.
Yeah. And I, as you go along with the different Jack the Ripper ones, you sort of the events occur, and all of a sudden. But so that is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Give that a look if you want. Right. Ian, this game here, this is one of the games that I've wanted to hear the most about since it's come out. What game would you like to sizzle this evening?
I would like to talk about Lacrimosa, which I think is how you pronounce that, from
Yes.
Devere Games, which I played last week. I'm a little bit late to it. I think it's been out for a little while. It's not that new, but it is a game. It's a Euro game, sort of midweight Euro game, and thematically, you are helping Mozart do something. It's very loose. There's musical notes. You move around the board. There's a picture of Mozart. It does look beautiful, though. The game looks really, really, really nice. Lots of sort of period-specific illustration and stuff, which I really like. It's a sort of a hand management. You take your actions using cards, and it's got this really clever system. One of my favorite things in games is when there's the system that you use to take your actions is like a really compelling puzzle. And that's the case in this game. So you've got a hand of 9 cards, and you've always got 9 cards, or a deck of 9 cards. But you can upgrade them and kind of make them better throughout the game. And every round you draw, I think it's 4 cards, and you're going to use 2 to take your action. And basically, you've got this player board, a very elaborate player board, which it's multi-layered and all that sort of thing. And every round you took 1 card at the top of your player board and 1 card at the bottom of your player board, and you're going to do that 4 times, and then there's like a resetting phase. And the card that you took at the top is the action that you're going to take, and the card that you took at the bottom is going to be part of the income that you get at the end of the round. So basically, you've got your hand of cards, you draw 4 cards, and you've got this really great decision of, okay, what action do I want to take? What income do I want? And, because it's a well-designed game, that's a tough decision because you want to do both. The card that has the income that you want also has the action that you want. And it's really, really clever. It kind of reminds me of Newton in that way. It's got this really clever card system that drives it. All these really discrete but meaty decisions. The actions that you take are generally pretty simple. You can buy new cards, which just replace cards in your hand. And it's funny in a way because you can actually completely take yourself out of the game for certain actions. So again, you've only got 9 cards in your hand, which represent the actions in the game. You've got doubles of some of them. But if you upgrade a card with a card that has a different action on it, then you just don't have that action anymore. So like in most Euro games, you can kind of focus on 1 or probably 2 of the 3 to 4 things that you can do in the game. So if you want to play a very specific game, you can actually just jettison the cards that do the things that you don't want to do, which is interesting. So yeah, the actions that you're going to move. There's a little Mozart figure on a map. You can move him around, and you'll get you different bonuses and all sorts of things like that. There's a kind of an area majority part at the bottom of the board, which is again thematically, what are you doing? You're helping complete. I think. But it gets you these like little income tiles, basically, which help you out later. You can also get these cards, which are opuses. I don't know what the plural of an opus is. And then
Opie, maybe.
yeah. And then later, with a different action, you can perform that, and you can either get points or you can sell it, and you can get money because the money's reasonably tight in the game as well. It's really good. It looks beautiful. As I said, the card action system is really what drew me to it and enamored me to it. I've played this once and I bought it straight after playing it. So I'm very, very, very impressed.
I'm just looking at when you're talking about the tapping as well. I'm just noticing the actual player board has little inserts where they slide in as well, which is kind of neat. You're not just tucking it underneath your player board; it's sliding right into the board itself.
Yeah, it's very neat. It works really well. The player boards are like these books that fold out, and then they're double. They're very elaborate. They're very very fancy. But yeah, your cards slide very satisfyingly in, and it covers the bits that you're not getting this turn, and just shows the bits that you are getting. Very clever.
It's definitely a sight on the table, like because of those player boards and
Right.
the board itself, and it's just like a couple of times at game days I've walked past it, and I'm like, "Oh, is that Lacrimosa?" And they go, "Yeah. Do you want to play?" And each time I've had to do something in the next sort of like 10 or 15
Yeah,
minutes,
right.
so I haven't been able to jump in and play, and I've just been super gutted. So, yeah,
Yeah,
this
I
is
recommend it.
on my list big time.
Yeah, I was a little concerned because I had heard murmurs that it is an area majority game, and I'm not a huge fan of area majority. But it's really not. There is a tiny bit, but it doesn't really feel like it.
Yep.
And yeah, I really liked it.
Cool. So that is Lacrimosa. So we had Lacrimosa, Splendor Duel, and Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective as our 3 sizzling games. So that's some serious super sizzles. That's not going to catch on, is it? It's really not going to catch on. So that sort of wraps up our game chat, and we'll move on to some big announcements in news. All right, so the first little announcement is, of course, our Patreon pub quiz, which is on this Friday, 28th of July at 8:30 p.m. So Australian Eastern Time. So any patrons feel free to drop in and bring a beverage of your choice and get ready for some I was going to say news. It might be some news, some current affairs, or some general knowledge, some trivia run by Chris, our patron. So thank you to Chris for running that. Super grateful. But the big news and PlayCon related news that we've been holding off on until we had the great man Ian O'Toole on the show is our charity shirts and posters for PlayCon. So yes, we are super excited to tell you about this. Each year we intend to have a different artist create the exclusive PlayCon shirt. All proceeds for this shirt will go to the charity nominated by the artist, and we are lucky enough this year that Ian has agreed to create our shirt. Set off the that was fireworks, not machine guns. Yeah, Ian, thank you so much for doing this. We are so grateful.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm very happy to be part of the first PlayCon.
Yeah, not only that, the art, like the t-shirts. So you are very thankfully making these t-shirts for us. Can you tell us a little bit about the charity that you've chosen?
Yeah, sure. So the charity is the Aboriginal Art Centre Hub in Western Australia, who do just a bunch of different work for Indigenous artists. They work with programs to sort of help and uplift artists, but they also provide like legal aid and advice and stuff like that to a wide range of artists. One of the things that caught my attention a little while ago that they have this project called Make It Real, which is very much focused on in Australia, you see a lot of products with Aboriginal art on them. You see a lot of prints, and you see a lot of boomerangs for sale and didgeridoos and all these kind of paraphernalia of Aboriginal culture. And the Make It Real project is trying to make sure that these products are ethically produced and come from the right people who should own this culture. And all that sort of stuff, which I think is credit where credit is due, is something that I feel very, very strongly about in any sort of creative endeavor. So I think that's really important work that they're doing.
Well, it sounds like it ties into your beliefs really well. And as a First Nations person myself, I'm also very grateful and very proud that you've selected the Aboriginal Arts Centre Hub of Western Australia as your choice of charity. So these shirts will be available for pre-order on the website, and you'll be able to pick them up at PlayCon on the first day of PlayCon. So yeah, like I said, all the proceeds are going to charity. We're not going to make a buck because we just think that we're grateful for you to be putting in the work for us. So yeah, thanks for that.
But they will be limited edition,
Yes.
so they won't be available after PlayCon. So if you want to support PlayCon, support Ian's charity as well, make sure you grab them when they become available. And of course, if you don't know how to do that, jump onto the website, which is playcon-au. Links are in the show notes. So you don't miss any updates.
Yeah, as is the link to the Aboriginal Art Hub of Western Australia. Will be in the show notes as well if you're interested in looking that up. But with that, we'll move on to the question of the pod. So the question of last week's pod that me and Dan asked the wider community was...
It was a genius question.
It was absolutely genius. In fact, it's so genius, I'm pretty sure Def came up with it. What's your favourite game that plays in 30 minutes or less? A hard 30 minutes. If it goes for 31 minutes, it's not qualified. It's out. Dan,
tight 3-0.
3-0. How many seconds is that? I should know, but I don't. Dan, would you like to read out our Facebook contributions?
Yeah, had a lot of massive responses on our Facebook. Just going to roll off a few. Tara Clapperton said Hive, and also Santorini. Brendan Resists said Kitsanidu.
Yep.
And the designers are from Melbourne as well for that game. Chris Anthony said Crusaders.
Great game.
Carol Gallagher said Azul. A lot of Azuls on Facebook. Roy Bleasdale said High Society. Great one. JB said the Outpost phase in Frosthaven.
I saw that one.
Yeah. I was very selective of it. Yeah.
Hey, it's kind of like a game within itself, right? So yeah, there was a couple that I think Sub-Zero Joe, so John Lowe said, Arkham building a deck and Arkham Horror Connor, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely something that takes about half an hour, if not longer. So yeah, a couple of good ones in there, a couple of actual good ones, and a couple of funny ones. Before we look at our Discord responses, Ian, do you have any favourite games that play in 30 minutes, a hard 30 minutes or less?
Yeah, in fact, one of my favourite games of all time plays in less than 30 minutes. If you play it with two players, that's a caveat? Is Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy is one of the best games ever designed, as far as I'm concerned, and it is best at two. In fact, in 30 minutes, I think we could probably get 2 or 3 games in if both players know the game. Yeah,
right.
But it's not as good as Roll for the Galaxy, is it?
you're just you're baiting me now.
I did it. That's it. I don't know. Funny.
Race. I love Race so much. It's amazing. It's got for what is probably a 15-minute game with, again, 2 players who know it well. So many little decisions. It's a really great system. It's amazing.
If you get to the point where your game is playing super super fast, are you just going through the motions? Is there still as much strategy, or is?
Yes, it's just fast.
Yeah,
right. That's one of the
things. It's like speed
that
chess, where you're still consciously making strategic decisions, but it's just bang, 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 bang.
Yes, familiarity just means you can assess any situation much, much quicker because you're familiar with the deck. So it's one of the reasons, actually, why I really don't like Roll for the Galaxy, and I have no interest in New Frontier, which is the board game version of it. Because whenever I'm playing one of those games, I just think, well, I could have played 10 games of Race in the time. I'd much rather do that. So yeah, Race has ruined so many other games for me.
Very good. So a couple from our Discord. We had Bacon 1986. Great username, by the way. My kids have enjoyed playing Skull with me recently. Some are much better at bluffing and keeping secrets than others. It can be rather hilarious. Yes, I've played that with my family as well. Stephen Lake says Night of the Ninja. And Jonathan has, as he quite often does, written us a great response. I like a lot of short games. 30 to 60 minutes is a nice sweet spot for me. Jonathan, we said 30 minutes. Anything over 30 minutes is no good. No, I really love the recent reprint and plays like Voyages, Aquamarine, and now Waypoints. There are heavier games that are up fit under the 30-minute mark for me when everyone else knows how to play, like Marvel Dice Zone or Hadrian's Wall. Scout has been one of those games recently, same as Oriflamme, Star Wars Deck Builder, or High Society. A round of the crew usually takes anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes as well, but a full series of game could take hours. But to properly answer the question, it would have to be one of either Blitzkrieg or Caesar. I rate them similarly, and I own Caesar while my mate owns Blitzkrieg. Both promise a playtime of 20 minutes, and they deliver even if someone needs to learn the game. It's a quick 5-minute teach, and you can play the game in under half an hour, including the teach. Brilliant strategy games, and just still design interesting choices and combos. Highly recommended for quick 2-player games. That said, if I want to play with more players, there's Scout, the Crew, Oriflamme, and High Society as you step in. Thank you, Jonathan, and all our other contributors. Now, for our new question of the pod, it would be remiss to have a superstar of the graphic design and art world like Ian on the show and not make our question about art in some style. So, gentlemen, I'm making a captain's call here, and I'm going to ask you and the rest of our community, what style of artwork would you like to see in a game? Dan.
You're going to throw to me first?
Me. Okay, I'll go to me first. I would love to see something similar to like with Botoku, but more manga. So that sort of leaning into like Princess Mononoke type thing, or there's a couple that are leaning into that Studio Ghibli, but more manga with the sharper, trying to think of like Yu Yu Hakusho or something like that, which is kind of a bit grimy. That would be really, really cool for me. I really dig something like that. We'll give Dan a little bit longer to think. Ian, anything rolling off the tip of your tongue?
That's really hard. I really like sort of classic adventure comic book illustrators.
Yes,
like Frank Frazetta. Well, he's not a comic book illustrator, but that sort of era of illustrators. Bernie Wrightson is one of my favorite artists ever. If there was a way that we could get Bernie Wrightson to do a board game, that would be amazing. Things like that. I'd like to see more games that use much more limited color palettes as well. I say this like I don't have some hand in maybe the possibility of this happening. Some way for you to organize this. But I really like when I look at, for instance, comic book artwork, I really respond to black and white artwork, to typically more than color artwork. And we don't get many black and white games.
No.
There's reasons for that, but maybe that's something we could look at. Yeah, I'd like to see more black and white games.
We've kind of just stepped on my answer because that's what I was working towards. I was working towards like a black and white style noir artwork. I was trying to think of some of the artworks that I really enjoy. And when it comes to artwork, my experience is very, very limited. But what I do was like growing up with comic books, and the one that I really, really sort of responded to, I really, really enjoyed is the Sin City style, where it was largely black and white. Those I don't know who the artist was, but that kind of style where there would occasionally be. So who was it?
Frank Miller.
Oh, I thought he was the writer. Is he the artist as well?
Both. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go. But occasionally there would be like a splash of red or a splash of color in it. Yeah, it's really, really striking. I love that. So, and another art style that I've enjoyed of late was Radlands with the really neon-y
like
sort of
smacking in the face.
Yeah. But that could only work with that style game. Whereas I think a more black and white noir could potentially cross into different sort of genres of games, if you like. Whereas if you're going to splash neon, it really needs to be it's either set in the 80s or it's set in some sort of punk
Yeah,
kind of thing. I couldn't see like a neon version of Lacrimosa.
Wow, that's like that's the expansion. That's when they get into like
That's
EDM
that's the Ian O'Toole collection. There you go.
So you're helping Daft Punk write a symphony.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, so good.
Yeah, trying to get faster, stronger, better,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
One more time. Very good. But it's not up to us. It's up to you guys in the community. Please hit us up on our Facebook, on our Twitter, and our Discord to answer the question, what style of artwork would you like to see in a board game? Speaking of our community, it would be remiss of me not to mention our fantastic Patreon. So just a shout out to a couple of them, James Ewing, Jason, Paul Bedford, and Cameron O'Reilly. Thank you guys so much. We could not run this podcast without your support. If you want to support this podcast, you can always go to patreon.com/boardgamebarbecue, sign up to donate and get access to special episodes and content. Of course, there are plenty of ways you can support the podcast without donating. You can go to Apple Podcasts and leave a star rating and review for us, or use Spotify's new star rating. It only takes a few minutes and means the world to us. You can get involved with the Board Game Barbecue community by joining our Facebook community, following us on Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. And of course, there's our Discord community, who I love and adore, where there's always games to play together, conversations going on. Get involved and support the show. All links are in the show notes. Moving on to the next and final segment, and this has been a long time coming, Ian. Time for you to fess up your oath. Do you remember your oath?
I do. It was Oracle of Delphi.
It was Oracle of Delphi. Did you manage to get that played?
The reason I remember it is because I played it this morning.
That's very good.
Yeah, I've owned this game since it came out, which is like 6 years ago. I don't know. I swore to play it at the Sydney Game Day when I went over, but it didn't happen, and I finally played it this morning, and it was really good. Thank God. I'm a big Stefan Feld game. It's very different from one of his games. It's a race game. There's no victory points in it. It's the only game I've ever played of his with no victory points. It is basically Zeus. So it takes place in Greek mythology. Zeus has given you 12 tasks to do. 6 of them are basically pick up a thing and bring it somewhere else. Statues and offerings and cubes, basically. 3 of them are what are 3 of them? 3 of them are kind of exploration based, where you have to kind of go around and find sites to put your shrines on. And then the last 3 are you have to defeat monsters, which sounds very un-Euro-y, and you do have to roll a die to try and you have to just dice combat basically as much as Stefan Feld does dice combat. But it's really good. You've basically you roll 3 action dice on your turn, and then you use them. So similar kind of to Castles of Burgundy. You take your actions with your dice, and you're playing on a sort of a modular hex board. It's got one ocean area that's all interconnected, and everything else is on different islands. You've got a little boat. You start in the middle, and then you travel around. So you use your dice to move, to pick up things, to fight monsters. The monster thing works. It's very strange. It's very straightforward, though. You've got a 10-sided die. The monster starts with a strength of 9, and you've got these shields that you can get throughout the game, which kind of protect you from stuff that happens. And it's basically the monster strength, which is 9, minus your shields, and you have to try and roll above that or equal to it on a 10-sided die, which sounds very lucky and random, and it is. But like any of his games with dice, you've got mitigation. So you've got these tokens that kind of work like the workers in Castle of Burgundy.
Bump up or drop down.
Yeah, sort of. Except this time you can spend 1 to just go again, basically. But every time you go again, it reduces the monster's strength by 1.
Right.
So
okay.
if you go in with like 4 or 5 helpers, it's a pretty sure thing. I mean, I guess you could still get hosed, completely hosed by luck. It is possible, but it didn't happen in our game. It felt very, very different. I do think so. The turns can be quite involved. You can get lots of extra actions. There's lots of combos you can do, and so there's a lot of when I do this, and then that gives me that, and then I turn over this, and I get that. And, so turns are very satisfying, but can be a bit long. So I think I would hesitate to play this with more than 2. Maybe a lot of the Feld games, like Castles of Burgundy being 1, I just will not play at 4 players. I'll play it at 3, but my favorite is actually 2 players. And with this, I think it would probably be the same. I would try it at 3. I'd very much hesitate to play it with 4, I think. But I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. Have either of you played it?
I have not, but you comparing it to Castles has made me very, very
it's very different to Castles, except that you do roll dice and then you deal with the results.
That's all it takes sometimes with me, Ian. It's like one thing that's similar, and I'll be into it. But very good. Do you have another oath you're looking?
Oh God.
That's going to take another sort of year and a half for you.
Just pick a game that you want to play on the morning of the next episode.
That's right. Yeah. I'm looking around. Oh, I have. Oh God, now I have to pronounce it. Oranienburger Canal by Uwe Rosenberg, which is a 2-player game that just came out from Spielworks. I haven't played that, and it's a 2-player game. So let's do that.
Done. I'll let Dan spell that in the run sheet. You can go for it.
Yeah, I'll try and work that out.
Very good. Well, me and Dan actually had the same oath, and judging by, I didn't get many messages from Dan during the week. So is that a good or a bad thing?
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, well.
Not play Unbreakable.
You got me all excited, and I was wondering because I was like, why didn't you pick up my phone?
I didn't. The plan was to set it up here on my desk in my office, but I actually I worked from home a lot more this week than I normally do, and so I was working from home and I didn't get to set up Unbreakable. And so no, unfortunately, I did not fulfill my oath, which was to play Too Many Bones Unbreakable in a week. And I feel like it's one of those things where I'm gonna I need to just suck it up and learn it because it's in the intimidating sort of column for me at the moment.
Do you know what, Dan? It is, and even when I was playing, so spoilers, I did do mine. I still had to go back and check a few things as well. So that's someone who I've played hours upon hours of this. It's been so long since I've played any form of it. I had to go back and double check things. Okay, like at what point do the baddies come in? When do I get to do my trove loot? Blah, 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 blah. Things that, that if you play it more and more, it just becomes second nature. But, you just got to check it. And it does add to the overhead. But I'll let you finish you're going to have to double up now, right?
Oh yeah. And I actually thought of something as you were reading out, for my double down. I remembered because Jonathan mentioned, print and plays, Voyages, Aquamarine, and now Waypoints. I've actually, I kickstarted and backed all 3 of those and have not played a single one of them. So I, Dan Harris, swear by enough time on the podcast next, I will have played all 3 of them. I think even Voyages and Aquamarine I have printed out.
Cool.
And haven't got around to playing them. And so I'll back that up with Waypoints as well. I'll play all 3.
Voyages
and I'll report back next time I'm on.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
I did get Unbreakable played. So I played with Gasket, who is not a new Gearlock, but he was new for me to play as. He's interesting because unlike the other Gearlocks whose skills get exhausted, his don't, because he's a mech, so he's a robot that rolls around, but instead he has this resource, this water resource, this fancy resource called water, that he has to sort of reduce the amount of hydro he has for each of the skills that he uses, and the more skills you use, it's like exponential. So for the first skill, it's 1, then it's 3, and then so on and so forth for each of these powerful skills. So you still need to go, oh, well, I don't have that much water left. But of course, you can upgrade them and use more water. Gail is one of the ones that comes in the box, and she's a bit of a mech. She's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. She can do status. She can do a bit of damage. But the one that I think everyone's the most excited by is Carcass.
Yeah.
And I was cooking with Carcass, man. He was great. He was so much fun. So you're looking for the strongest baddie to beat, so you can put him down and put them on your meat hooks, and then trying to upgrade your meat hooks so you've got more baddies on them. You can skin and use their hide, and then use the actual. Yeah. It's really, really cool. Like, in super. He's by far one of the most thematic sort of gearlocks that I've played as. So yeah, it's really fun in terms of new rules. So the map has changed. You've got these lava sections that some enemies can turn into lava by different actions, and you can move through lava, but if you land on it, you have to take a damage. And they generally, the ones that can make it erupt, they generally don't take damage from the lava sections, but other enemies do. So you can use it to your advantage. But really, really good. I think I would like to wait and discuss this game further, maybe once yourself or Mitch have played it.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be a bit unfair maybe if Mitch didn't get to talk about it.
I definitely think,
show.
I think probably Mitch will sizzle it once he comes.
So
I know Jules has it as well. So
definitely something I'm looking forward to playing more of and exploring more of as the game goes on. But for my next oath, I think I might dial it down a bit, and you were talking about your sort of print and plays. I'm going to look at playing a roll and write that I haven't played yet, and that is by friends of the show, Motor City Gameworks, Motor City. So I have not played that yet. I'm really, really interested to. Again, another game that I'm happy to play solo, bit of chase your score, even though they take the spots when you want to take them, but that's fine.
That's a killer.
Don't get me started, Dan. It's late at night. I'm already grumpy.
Absolute killer.
But yeah, so no, I kind of advise for the next time I'm on the show, I'll have played Motor City. So very good. Some moderate success and long time oath fulfillment from the three of us. Very happy with that. But sadly, it does bring us to the end of our show. Thank you so much, Ian, for being on. A pleasure as always.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Just remind us where we can catch you, any social media forms, Twitter, anything like that you want us to put in the show notes for you.
I'm on Twitter for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Instagram. If I don't remember what my handles are, I'll be honest. I'm no good at self-promotion.
Well,
I have a website, which is tool.com, so you can go there. And I think that probably has links. Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Very good. Dan, always a pleasure, my friend.
Same time next week, Connor?
Same time next week. And if listeners are down, it's not you, Ian. It's us, as per usual. Very, very good. Once again, thanks for Ian for coming on the show. Keep playing those games, and we'll see you all again soon. And of course, if you do not want to support us via Patreon, there's plenty of places that you can go, including our... There's plenty of places you can support us, I should say.
You can go.
You can go. No, there's plenty of places you can support us, including our Facebook community, Discord, Twitter. I've lost it.
So many places that we go.
All right. Yeah.
I'll do it again.
I'll tell you where you can go.
I would normally go on script, and I might tell I don't, and that happens. All right, I'll just do it again.
Don't stop recording.
Or we'll have no content.
Yeah.